Alright everyone, welcome to Deep Dives with Dogs. Today we're going to kind of talk about the rise and the fall of Spanish dominance, um, and how Spain for a period there could have been considered probably one of the strongest powers in the world. So Spain becomes unified in the 1400s with the unification of Aragon and Castile. Um, this leads to kind of a pretty prosperous unification. It was under marriage, so that makes things a little easier. Well, then, what does this wonderful married couple do? They hire one, one, little Italian explorer named Christopher Columbus. He says, "Hey, I'll find you guys a route to uh, Asia by going west." Um, I know this is kind of a little misconception. By the way, I always got to talk about this whenever I bring up Columbus. Columbus knew the Earth was round. He did not know that the Earth had another landmass, of course, but he did know the Earth was round, and he probably knew around the size of the Earth. At this time, most people kind of did. People have known about that for about 2 to 3 thousand years by the time of Columbus. But yeah, so Columbus says, "Hey, I'll go sail out west," obviously, and well, the rest is history. He discovers the New World, and Spain, they're going to get on that train first, and they are going to conquer a lot of the New World. Basically, all of Central America, parts of North America. Um, he'll they'll conquer lots of South America, and this leads to basically a Spanish Golden Age, and a time of Spanish ascendancy into power. And they're kind of uncontested, really. Spain, because of the conquering of the New World that they do, Spain has a lot of resources. They have a lot of gold, they have a lot of foods, they can make different clothing with some new stuff they have found. Uh, they have new trade goods, all this other stuff, and then lots of materials like iron, steel, make it with it's like a make into steel. Lots of other metals, of course, as well. And this allows Spain to become kind of contender for the strongest nation in Europe. Um, but of course, that doesn't last forever, and really doesn't last all that long. Um, Spain has some other contenders to deal with for wanting to be the strongest nation in Europe, and their biggest competitor in that regard would be the previous biggest and most powerful nation in Europe, being France. Now, France, not necessarily the biggest nation in Europe by this point. That'd probably be the Rus. And we're talking about like kingdoms at this point, so like not necessarily nations and how we think nation. The idea of a nation state doesn't really exist yet. It's starting to form, but mostly in places like Britain, stuff like that. But it's not quite there yet. But we'll say France as a nation just because it's easier. But France is by far, for most of Europe's history. Oh, Mayhem's getting dragged along by the other two. Rocky, you got Mayhem all stuck, buddy. Nope. Yep, there we go. Look at that. Look what they did to him. Poor little guy. Got him all trapped here. But France, for most of Europe's history, is definitely the top dog. Um, Pun intended. Uh, and they really intend to keep it that way. Um, Eventually, Spain gets into a war during the 30 Years' War. Um, Spain and France fight at the Battle of uh, Rocroi. Rocroi? I think it's how it's pronounced. Um, and Spain gets defeated. The French are led by Louis II de Bourbon. And this kind of ends any hope of military ascendancy in Europe for Spain. The French pretty handily beat them, and it's not that surprising, really, when you're looking at just the military power. While France, yes, doesn't have the big empire that Spain does, one of the problems for Spain is that they are not necessarily the most well-trained troops. Not to say they aren't trained good, but France has been known for a long time as being very militarily prestigious. And they tend to keep that pretty much always. Spain, really in the grand scheme of things, is still kind of a new nation by this point. And while they have been around in some regard, obviously, they haven't necessarily done that through military ascension to begin with. It was through a peaceful marriage, as peaceful as it could be. And so it doesn't lead them to be known as a military power. Where France has a lot to prove. They were the military power. They are the military power. They want to be proven like, hey, we're the top dog. And so they will fight pretty hard. And also, sometimes it's just luck. Let's just be honest. Sometimes it's luck. And in this regard, France kind of has quite a bit of it. At least for a while. Not forever, though. But with the end of the Spanish military ascendancy, Spain will kind of fall into a little bit of a darker age. The golden age of Spain is not so anymore, really. They'll still exist as a big empire for quite a while, but as time goes on, more and more will be chipped away. More and more of their power will be diminished until eventually the mighty Spain that was once known will be kind of no more. Spain is still a very powerful nation today, but they're definitely not at the peak, just like most nations aren't at the peak of their power like they once were. But that's going to do it for this video. If you guys like the video, leave a like. If everyone wants to improve these videos, leave a comment down below. I always appreciate your feedback. And as always, subscribe. It really does help out the channel. Thank you.